Sometimes I think one of the hardest parts of doing creative things can be the friction that either keeps us from getting started or from continuing the work when things get challenging. As an artist, I've always believed that some of the most powerful tools are the ones that almost disappear into the background and leave us with the space to create freely without having to think about what we're using to do it. Hi everyone, I'm Alice, and in this video I'll be sharing 10 things I use in my art practice that take away some of that friction I mentioned earlier, and just make the creative process a bit smoother. Most of these are small and pretty simple really, but that doesn't make them any less valuable to me. They're kind of like the unsung heroes of my studio, and I'll link as many of them as I can in the description. Now let's get into it. I've come to realize that buying quality brushes almost always ends up being a good investment. I use mostly brushes by Princeton for the mediums I work with. Their watercolor brushes in particular are great because they keep their shape well and hold a good amount of water. I use several from their Velvet Touch, Aqua Elite, and Heritage lines. For acrylic and oil paints, I use brushes from Princeton's Catalyst and Aspen series. When it's time to clean and maintain my brushes, I use the next item on my list, and that's the Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. This product does a great job at removing oil, acrylic, and watercolor paints from brushes, and it also conditions the bristles. This really does help to keep my brushes in great shape. A good companion to those brushes is this glass palette by New Wave. It's not only durable and easy to clean, but the neutral gray tone can also help you judge colors more accurately when mixing paints. I use that palette in combination with this Masterson palette container to preserve paints when I'm working on a piece. The Airtight seal on this box can help keep your paints from drying out for a few days if you've started a painting session that you plan to continue a bit later. Next up is the Swordfish Icon pencil sharpener. Before getting this, I was having a pretty tough time keeping my pastel pencils sharp. They would break nearly every time I tried to sharpen them. But with the Swordfish, I can get all my pencils to a fine point. Perfect for the detail work in my pastel paintings. All that sharpening eventually grinds my pencils down to a fraction of their original size. And when that happens, I use these little things to quite literally extend the life of my pencils. If you're not familiar with them, they're called extenders, and they let me continue using my pencils until they can't be sharpened anymore. The next item on the list is a cordless handheld vacuum. I use this to clean up the dust from soft pastels as I'm working on a piece. I bought this one at a local electronics store, but there are lots of similar options available online. I use it to lift excess pastel dust off the paper and around my table as I work, which reduces the amount of particles that end up in the air. If you work with pastels, it's a good idea to look for a vacuum with a HEPA filter so it can trap fine particles. This next item is a must-have when I'm drawing or painting. It's a mirror. And it's useful because it gives me a fresh perspective on my work. Looking at a piece in reverse lets me see it from a different view, so I can pick up on subtle mistakes in proportion, value, and composition. These are things that my eyes can sometimes miss when I've been staring at a painting for hours. I love kneaded erasers for their versatility. They're not necessarily a replacement for traditional plastic erasers, but more of a companion, really. That said, I do use the kneaded kind most of the time. They're great not just for removing things, but also as drawing tools themselves. They can be molded into shapes and used to add details like highlights and texture in drawings. The last item on the list is this small expandable table. I know it's much bigger than the other items I've talked about, but it's honestly been such a great addition to my studio that I had to include it. This gives me extra surface and storage space, things I feel like I never have enough of. What's great is that it can stay at this compact size, be expanded on one side, or both, wheeled around to wherever it's needed, and moved out of the way when I'm done with it. I hope you found this video helpful. No matter what you use, I think at the end of the day, it's about creating something and finding joy in that process. Let me know if you have any questions or want to share some of your most valued creative tools. Thanks for watching.